is there, I don't know what the schedule is with the satellites right now, but does NASA Nellie have time to, is she coming around right now? Well, I guess that's our answer, isn't it? So let's let NASA Nellie take it away.
Okay, now this is interesting. A recent New York Times headline read, NASA hired 24 theologians to study human reaction to aliens. Here's a quote from that article. Between heaven and earth, where do aliens fit in? That's the question that NASA hopes theologians at the Center of Theological Inquiry, or CTI, in Princeton, New Jersey, can answer in a recent effort to understand how humans will react to news that intelligent life exists on other planets. Wow, is all I can say. This was too good to be true, so I looked into that claim. It seems as though NASA did provide a $1.1 million grant toward the Center of Theological Inquiry to assess the implications for the hunt of alien life, to study the impact of finding life beyond Earth. That research, called the Societal Implications of Astrobiology, ended 4 years ago, we are told. The participants in this group worked independently through the center and were not considered NASA employees. The program was also funded in part by the John Templeton Foundation. What is the John Templeton Foundation? It is an organization that supports progress in religion and science to promote moral character, intelligence, and creativity of people. The foundation was awarded the National Humanities Medal in 2008. Impressive. In 2016, Inside Philanthropy called it the oddest or most interesting big foundation around. That organization digs into how foundations and major donors give their money away and why. Back to the John Templeton Foundation. Here are some examples of their annual Templeton Prize winners: Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, and Jane Goodall. This prize is given for achievements in the field of spirituality, science, and religion. So, CTI was funded not only by NASA, but also by the John Templeton Foundation. How did this announcement all start? One of the theologians involved in that research, Reverend Dr. Andrew Davidson from the University of Cambridge, recently wrote, "Since the evolution of life is clearly not impossible, and the places where that might happen are probably extraordinarily numerous, there may be, well, a great deal of life elsewhere." Oh, and Reverend Dr. Davidson is also coming out with a book on the subject in the new year. So there was the Pentagon Ufo Report. Then officials approved an amendment that will organize a specific department to study the phenomenon, and now the question was found its way into the headlines. What would human reaction be to other life in the universe? So who knows how or when disclosure will follow? Maybe it will be past or present life on Mars, or maybe moons like Europa or Titan. Possibly the launch of the new Webb telescope will give us some answers about these foreign planets. So, where is the Webb telescope anyway? Now remember the Webb telescope that was launched on Christmas Day? It is planned that this spacecraft will be able to observe the faint glow from some of the oldest, most distant objects in space. It will see the first stars and galaxies that emerged from the cosmic soup of the early makings of our universe. Now, as of noon today, the telescope is 443,821 miles from Earth, and it has 454,867 miles to go to its L2 orbit. The L2 orbit is a location in space where it is nearly 1 million miles from Earth in the direction opposite of the Sun. It will be less vulnerable to solar radiation that can interfere with its infrared observations. And at this point, it will be like a parking spot for the craft. The telescope has already begun to uncoil its sun shield. It will reflect sunlight and radiate heat efficiently, allowing the telescope to maintain its cold side at a minus 370 degrees Fahrenheit. The observatory's sun-facing hot side will be around 230 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun shield, when completely unfurled, measures almost 70 feet long and 46.5 feet wide, and the assembly includes hundreds of hinges, motors, bearings, springs, pulleys, cables, and gears. The Webb spacecraft systems engineer said, all this just to keep the sun shield under control as it unfolds. The beginning of this process started Tuesday and should finish as early as January 2nd. The focus will then shift to its primary and secondary mirrors, which are scheduled to be completed by January 7th. And we will update you next time.
And thank you so much, NASA Nellie. Let me finish showing a couple of pictures here. This is a picture kind of centering on the mirror. And do you remember the size of the mirror?
No.
40-some feet, I think, across.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we think we have a big telescope in the garage here. It's 12 inches across, and it's too heavy for me to mess with. I better get Grandpa at 91 to help me carry it. Here's another artist rendering of how it will look. And I believe that it's showing the sun shield below it, not yet unfurled. And it looks like those panels will come out and will help to shield it from the sun. But remember, this is not a satellite that's rotating around the moon. I mean, around Earth, like the Hubble and things like that. It's actually going around the sun, so it's way out there, and it might meet what's there, Mr. Tesla, in his car up there. What's his name again? Remember the joke about him too? Yeah, that the car smells like. What's his name again?
Musk.
Elon Musk. That's right. So Elon Musk is out there in his sports car, and the two of them may come into contact. One does not know. However, let's get on with some of our normal nostalgia and famous people's birthdays. And Anthony Hopkins was born on December 31st, 1937. So today is his birthday. Happy birthday, Anthony, or Andy. Sir Philip Anthony Hopkins is a Welsh film, stage, and television actor, and he was born near Port Talbot, Wales. His father was a baker, and he said about his father, I always remembered his hands, his hardened, broken hands. Well, I hope he made some good bread with that. During school days, he would rather immerse himself in art, such as painting, drawing, or playing the piano, rather than his studies. Good for him. He said later, I was a poor learner, which left me open to ridicule and gave me an inferiority complex. Boy, he don't look like an inferior. Look at Silence of the Lambs and see what an inferiority complex does not look like. He says, I grew up absolutely convinced I was stupid. Well, he's got that in common with me. But I think it's probably these were subjects he wasn't interested in. And if you're not interested in it, you seem stupid to other people. Hopkins was inspired by Richard Burton. Don't blame him for that, who he met at the age of 15. After his service in the British Army, Hopkins moved to London to study the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. That's where he did. He studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. He spent several years as a stage actor, and when in 1965 he met Laurence Olivier, who invited him to join the Royal National Theatre in London. Anthony became Oliver's understudy and filled in when Olivier's understudy, and filled in when Olivier was struck with appendicitis. Ooh, poor him, but he got fixed on that. Up until that night, Hopkins was always nervous prior to going on stage, and that changed. He gradually distanced himself from stage and decided to become a film actor. He got his first break, in the film debut of The Lion in Winter, and I love that movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and let me just wave to Jackie over here. Okay, and that co-starred Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn, with Timothy Dalton making his film debut as well. Hopkins starred in several films from 1968 to 1978, including Juggernaut opposite Richard Harris and Omar Sharif, and Magic starring Anne Margaret and Burgess Meredith. Magic was kind of an expansion from Dead of Night, which is another English film that came before that, and there was also another episode written for Twilight Zone by Rod Serling, but the idea did come from Dead of Night. So if you haven't seen Dead of Night, it is really cool. So I think I am old enough to use the word cool. We talked about with Sean earlier, things used to be when I was in high school, things were boss. I don't know how that ever got into our vernacular, but it did. In 1980, he starred in David Lynch's The Elephant Man, which received 8 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Then came Silence of the Lambs, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, and Jodie Foster for Best Actress. Anthony has starred in close to 100 films. That is a whole lot. I'm just looking at that fire. We got a fire really roaring over there. So, but that's nice. It'll be okay. It'll settle down. And anyway, so many stage productions as well as television appearances. And he is a recovering alcoholic and has stayed sober since 1975. I think that's too long to be sober. Anyway, he also was diagnosed with Asperger Syndrome, which is, I've got a good friend that's got that, and not a horrible thing. And sometimes will allow you to concentrate better on what you're doing. So Hopkins has supported many charities, and notably becoming president of the National Trust Snowdonia Appeal, raising funds for preservation of Snowdonia National Park in North Wales. He's a patron of the YMCA, volunteer teacher at the Ruski School of Acting in Santa Monica, prominent member of Greenpeace, and a patron of Rehabilitation for Addicted Prisoners Trust. Wow. He has composed music. Now, this is something I didn't know until we got into exploring his past. He composes music, with compositions premiering with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, as well as a waltz which premiered in Vienna. Where else? Hopkins resides in Malibu, poor guy, and continues to paint and play the piano. So can you imagine him playing the piano, looking at the waves coming in on a beautiful evening in Malibu? Okay. Anyway, here's a short list of his films. It's not short, but this list is short. And let's get some pictures of him. This is probably a few years ago. I'd say very well recognized. And I'm getting a little bit old. We're aging as the pictures are developing here. But he is aging well. And there he is, fairly current picture there, but still very distinguished looking. And he's gazing at something with a lot of energy. So good for him. Spartacus, which we've talked about quite a bit. Ugh, that's heavy. fact, we were just playing Khachaturian music, Spartacus Ballet, which actually was used as a major part of the soundtrack of Hudsucker Proxy. So how you like that? I just put that record away, so we don't have it here to show. But anyway, this was, of course, Stanley Kubrick's first big film, and had a lot to do with hiring people out of the blacklist and actually getting rid of the blacklist. So Spartacus was 1960, starred Kirk Douglas, Laurence Olivier, again, Tony Curtis, and the film was nominated for 6 Academy Awards and won 4. I think, was it last week I talked about when I was an urchin in the San Fernando Valley, where they gave us all a bunch of, where, it was on the radio and television, not to be alarmed if you see fire and smoke, because at the Universal Studios right there in Burbank, they were filming a fiery scene from Spartacus. Lion in Winter, which we already mentioned, 1968, and that was directed by Anthony Harvey and starred Peter O'Toole, Katharine Hepburn, film nominated for 7 Oscars and won 3. Elephant Man was, of course, a David Lynch classic. I put it a little bit below Eraserhead, but that's a whole nother story. This actually is the soundtrack, and I love all of the music and the sound effects that are on David Lynch films. And, I talked about how great I thought the new Dune from Denis Villeneuve. And people, they still like the David Lynch one, but it's a little weird. But again, this album was picked up at a thrift store kind of thing. I think we paid $1 for it. But very happy to have that.
Yeah. We saw the play too.
We saw the play also at South Coast Repertory back in the day. Anyway, Elephant Man was 1980 and directed by, guess who? David Lynch, and starred John Hurt as the Elephant Man. You never really saw his face, and Bancroft. And the film was nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture. Why am I thinking of Cher when I think of... you know why? Yes. Because the X-Files did a spoof, well, I don't know how to call it a spoof, but a takeoff on Elephant Man, and it did star
Cher was supposed to be singing on stage.
And I highly recommend it again, but I loved X-Files, and X-Files so often had great humor.
Yes.
Speaking of humor, Silence of the Lambs, 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme. We talked about Jonathan Demme on another film last week, and that starred Jodie Foster, Glenn Scott. The film was nominated for 7 Oscars and won 5, including Best Picture and Best Actor in Leading Role. Who was, guess who? That's right, Anthony Hopkins. So... they kind of call this a horror film, and I think one of the first horror films to ever get so many awards, but I don't think of it so much as a horror film as a psychological study. And yes, it's got a lot of weird and horrible things in it, but what a great film that is. Okay? Bram Stoker's Dracula. I remember seeing that in the movies, starring Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder. I think Winona Ryder was the one that came up with the idea and went to Francis Ford Coppola with the idea to begin with. Keanu Reeves, Tom Waits, who I love in everything, and especially his music, was nominated for 4 Academy Awards and won 3. And, there's a small version because it's a DVD. And I'd like to get that on 4K. Another time we'll talk about why older movies translate better to 4K than newer movies. But I'm not saying don't get them because it's a newer movie. But I think the best looking picture I have ever seen was the first time Forbidden. This was a brand new print of Forbidden Planet. It had never gone through a projector before. We saw it on a Halloween at the Orpheum Theater, and I'll never forget that. It was just amazing. Anyway, Legends of the Fall, 1994, directed by Edward Zwick, who we talked about last week, because Eddie had done Glory, and it starred Brad Pitt. Film nominated for 3 Oscars and won 1 for Best Cinematography. So let's get into, yeah, we got some more time here. Let's talk about Val Kilmer. And Val Kilmer has some great things going for him. He's got some health problems, I believe, right now, or had been. But Val Edward Kilmer is an American actor, and he was born in Los Angeles, right here. His father was an aerospace equipment distributor and real estate developer. His parents divorced when he was 8. His younger brother had epilepsy and drowned in a jacuzzi at 15. Ouch. We're not starting out with a lot of pleasantries with Val here. Val attended high school with Kevin Spacey and was the youngest person at the time to be accepted into the Juilliard School's drama division. How you like that? While at Juilliard, Kilmer starred in a play at the Public Theater at the New York Shakespeare Festival, and also appeared off-Broadway with Kevin Bacon, which reminds me, did we ever cook that bacon today?
No.
No? Okay, and Sean Penn, and on television in episodes of the After School Special. His big break in film was a comedy spoof of spy movies, Top Secret, and he took a brief hiatus and backpacked in Europe before being cast in the action film Top Gun alongside Tom Cruise. I guess there's another Top Gun coming out. And of course, the house, the famous Top Gun house, is there in Oceanside. And I know they're building a new hotel resort on the same lot. I think they're moving that house. They're not going to destroy it. I'm not sure. I need to get over to Oceanside. It ain't that far away, and so much is going on in Oceanside these days. So a very successful film followed as he worked for Oliver Stone in the film The Doors, playing singer Jim Morrison. Kilmer memorized the lyrics to all of Morrison's songs prior to his audition, and he prepared for the role by attending Doors tribute concerts and read Morrison's poetry. He dressed in Morrison-like clothes, spent time at his old hangouts along the Sunset Strip, and, well, I used to do that too. I don't know whose hangouts they were, but that was a long time ago. And mostly ending up at the statue of Bullwinkle. And somebody's going to have to tell me if Bullwinkle is still there on the Sunset Strip. I get up there every now and then, but I keep forgetting to look for Bullwinkle's statue, where us late teenagers and early 20s would hang around and have little powwows. Anyway, his portrayal of Morrison was so convincing that the members of the Doors had a hard time distinguishing his voice from Jim's, particularly with the song The End. Val made several trips to New Orleans to help in the 2005 Hurricane Katrina disaster relief, supports Native American affairs, and is an advocate of environmental protection. So he's got a lot in common with Anthony Hopkins. He briefly considered running for governor of New Mexico in 2010. Wow. Who was governor then? Was it Richardson? I don't know.
I think so.
Anyway, he claims he is a terrible cook, loves scuba diving. I used to too, but then I got so fat I couldn't scuba dive because they didn't have enough weights to keep me down because I was very buoyant, as you know, which made me very popular on the beach because when I was fat, I did create a lot of shade and I was very buoyant in case anybody was having trouble. So anyway, he loves scuba diving, raised bison on his 6,000
Acre.
yeah, it's probably acres ranch in New Mexico, which he sold in 2011. He turned down Kyle MacLachlan's role in Dune. Really?
Yeah.
We just talked about that Dune.
Mhm.
And Blue Velvet, and regretted it afterwards. So let me take a look.
Well,
Do we have?
Blue Velvet.
Well, we've got
With-
Blue Velvet, of course. And but Kyle MacLachlan became like a real stable of David Lynch, and of course was also on the TV series, which I loved and still do.
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks. You know, there is a Twin Peaks up near Lake Arrowhead. It's called, but it's not the same thing. So he turned down those roles, believe it or not. He also turned down Crimson Tide, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, we've changed the cover of this a little bit to accommodate Val, right? What do you think? Huh? I think that's good. And he also turned down Blown Away, and we've done another job on that. We put him back into the limelight of Blown Away. Movie was pretty good, but Blue Velvet was, to me, amazing. So, but so be it. Here's some pictures before we go too much further. There we are. There's Val Kilmer as a younger lad, and as an old. This is probably, is this from? As it looks like he's souped up as a pilot there in Top Gun, but who knows for sure. And here's a little bit later showing some age on him. And of course, you and I, we don't know anything about aging. So since, you know, I look so young, there I am. No, but there he is. But he's looking okay. So all of these people have turned down, you know, roles that they've been. So what can you say? Denzel Washington, you know, got the role in Crimson Tide, and Lewis, an interview with the vampire, he turned that down. Do we have that handy? No. And that went to Brad Pitt. So there. Val Kilmer has starred in over 70 films, in spite of turning down some of those. In addition to Jim Morrison, Val has played Elvis, Doc Holliday, Batman, Simon Templar of the Saint fame, and Simon Templar, of course, the master of disguise, and even Moses. So here is some of the films, which we'll try to get in before we take our little break. And they are Willow. So here is Willow, and of course that's he right on the cover. Boy, that's a thick, oh, let's see. Yeah, not too much on the inside. But there he is on the cover of the Laserdisc. And Willow, 1988, was directed by Ron Howard, starred Billy Barty. All right, I like Billy Barty. Story by George Lucas, film nominated for 2 Academy Awards. The Doors, 1991, directed by Oliver Stone, starred Meg Ryan and Kyle MacLachlan, who got the role that he passed up for Dune. And these are the David Lynch versions of Dune and, of course, Blue Velvet. Billy Idol was also in it. True Romance, 1993, directed by Tony Scott. And we talked about him, I think, a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. Time goes by fast, doesn't it? Which reminds me, we're almost at the end of a whole year here. So, True Romance was, like I said, Tony Scott film, starred Christian Slater, Dennis Hopper, and Gary Oldman. The Island of Dr. Moreau, 1996, Okay. This is that one. This, I like this one. It was very weird, and I think being weird is what it's supposed to be. And this has Marlon Brando, and it says directed by John Frankenheimer. I am not sure about that. There were two. Well, one may have taken over for the other. Frankenheimer, of course, very famous. Richard Stanley, not so famous, mostly because of this film. And Richard Stanley took a hiatus for a while and came back with, I think, a wonderful version of H.P. Lovecraft's The Color Out of Space, and that starred
Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. Anyway, the two directors, I guess, were John Frankenheimer and Richard Stanley, and starred Marlon Brando and David Thewlis, Thewlis. If you saw his picture, you'd know who I was talking about. The Saint. David Thewlis was, of course, he was in 7 years in Tibet. Yes. 7 years in Tibet and in Harry Potter. And and he turned into a wolf man. So here is The Saint. And of course, The Saint was a long-running movie series and a television series. And in the movies and or television, I know it was played by George Sanders, right? Mm-hmm. To begin with. And then his brother, George Sanders, supposed to be not a very nice guy. And his brother, John Conway, the last name is Conway anyway, supposed to be a really nice guy, but Conway played the Saint after that. And Val Kilmer after that.
This was a good one, I thought.
This was, this was kind of a lot of fun. I think it had a lot to do with cold fusion, believe it or not. So, since it's New Year's, I want to, before we take our quick break, because there's news even at New Year's, and that kind of thing, I want to wish everyone again, before we take our break, a great, wonderful, and productive new year. So let's all make 2022 even better than 2021, which I think was better than 2020. So have a great new year. Stick with us. We'll be back just after the break for commercial sponsors and the news. Thanks so much.